As I've been reading the comments on my recent video about why Christmas feels so different now, something kind of hit me, and that's that Christmas doesn't just feel different now. Christmas is different now. It used to be so much better, and I mean objectively better, especially if you grew up in the 80s or 90s and even in the 70s. And that's not just nostalgia goggles or old man yells at cloud type of thing. It was better, and not just because we were kids and I'm grown up now and all of that, but because the world, the culture, the entire way that we experienced Christmas was built differently. Christmas in the 80s and 90s was somehow just as loud and in your face as it is now, but it was also warmer, slower, more communal, a truly more magical Christmas. Back then, December felt like the time when the whole world slowed down, just enough to breathe the same cold air, hear the same Christmas songs floating over the department store speakers and the radio airwaves, and to watch the same movies in the same living rooms at the same time. We lived a shared Christmas time, a Christmas where the toy store windows in the malls and down on Main Street glowed with the toy setups that they had, with TV shows where you planned the entire night around them, family gatherings and church and school celebrations. All those things were ironclad traditions. And the movies. Boy, did we ever have some of the most iconic Christmas movies ever. They were made to feel like they were going to last longer than just the holiday season, and they have. It was a moment, all of it. Those Christmas times are when the world stepped into that season together. And it was a time when the kids were all connected by the things that we were interested in, the toys that we dreamed about, the cartoons and movies that fed into those. Everyone watched the same movies at the same time. Families did things together, and they never let the true meaning of the season be forgotten. And tradition is what that all boils down to. And it wasn't something back then that we rolled our eyes at. It was the point of it all. A look at the films, the traditions, the toys, the monoculture, the family memories, and the cultural heartbeat that made Christmas in the 80s and 90s feel warmer, richer, slower, and more unified than anything we experience today. It was pretty easy to see if you look back on it. So, let's go back to when Christmas lights felt brighter, when wonder felt bigger, and when the magic didn't just come from convenience, but from participation. Back to an era when Christmas movies exploded into pop culture, when classics from earlier decades still meant something, when toys united every kid across the country, and when the ideas of faith, family, fun, and tradition still meant something. This is why Christmas was better in the 80s and 90s, and this is how we could get that magic back. So pop that tape in. I got you. Let's go do this. All right, now first and foremost, this is a pop culture and a movie channel, and Christmas in the 80s and 90s tied right into that because we had some of the most iconic and best Christmas movies of all time. Before we get into the rest of the traditions, the toys, the family memories, and everything, let's start with that cinematic truth. The 80s and 90s were the golden age of Christmas movies. Not just good movies, but ones that are still defining Christmas time today. You look at A Christmas Story, that's 1983, a movie nobody cared about in theaters, but that VHS and television turned it into a cultural Christmas institution. The feel of that film, the ridiculous lamp, the BB gun, the pink bunny suit became our mythology. And if that could be topped. It was topped by 1989's National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, as you see my shirt. The chaotic American Christmas captured in less than 2 perfect hours. Clark Griswold hanging those lights, the tree through the window, Cousin Eddie in the driveway. It's all holiday comfort food. And then you talk about the 90s and you look at Home Alone, 1990, based off Die Hard, another Christmas movie kind of from the 80s. You got a kid defending his house at Christmas, a John Williams score, John Hughes behind the script, Chris Columbus, an icon, Macaulay Culkin screaming with his aftershave. The film didn't just become a tradition, it reset the entire Christmas canon. This is something you're going to watch every year. And then mid-90s, you still had it coming with the Santa Claus, a modern fairy tale managed to feel somehow brand new and timeless at the same time. And then we're not even talking about things like Scrooged, Prancer, Jingle All the Way, A Muppet's Christmas Carol, so many more. Even the Christmas-adjacent films that I was talking about, Die Hard, Gremlins, Lethal Weapon, Trading Places, Edward Scissorhands. These movies all felt magical and not manufactured. They felt handcrafted. You could feel the ambition behind them, the creativity, the risk, the love, the heart. And that is why they've become so ingrained in our pop culture with Christmas time. At that point, Hollywood wasn't trying to hit a streaming quota. They weren't trying to make something people would revisit just that one time and never come back to again. They wanted people to come back to it again and again. And guess what? We still do. Today's Christmas movies feel much more like content, and there's something that is kind of easily discarded, forgotten. They feel like they were made on an assembly line of check marks. But back then, when one of those movies hit, it became a part of our Christmas traditions. Entire families would gather around TVs every year and watch them. It was appointment tradition, not I'll stream it later if the algorithm reminds me, or it's just kind of disposable filler. They actually helped shape Christmas as we felt it and experienced it. Today, they really feel more like filler content just thrown out there to feed the algorithm, disposable, rushed, easily forgotten. But in the 80s and 90s, they gave Christmas a cinematic identity that still helps to identify and define the holiday today. But I think a big difference between the 80s, 90s, 70s, and now is even though we had all those awesome iconic films and iconic things happening and being created, we didn't forget what came before. The reverence for the stuff that came before. We didn't treat older films like It's a Wonderful Life, Miracle on 34th Street, the original How the Grinch Stole Christmas, all of these things. We didn't treat them like old and, that's so, past, that's get that out of here. Every kid that grew up in the 80s and 90s remembers flipping through the TV around Christmas and seeing It's a Wonderful Life, Miracle on 34th Street, White Christmas, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, all that Rankin Bass stuff, Charlie Brown Christmas, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. All of that stuff that came well before us, we adopted it in to the 80s and 90s culture at Christmas time because we weren't like standing off from it. We weren't looking at that stuff that was much older and saying, ooh, it's outdated or that's so cringe. Nobody complained about the black and white or the claymation stop motion. We watched those things as sacred traditions. They were films that came before us that helped carry on our Christmas history and our Christmas story. They were passed down. It helped make the season and everybody there at that time feel connected to the generations and everything before us in a way that we don't now. Because today the algorithm buries older films. Everything is new all the time. And if it wasn't made in the last 5 minutes, it's forgotten. There's literally TikToks about younger generations that think that they invented Coke floats. I mean, because there's no reverence or no attention to history or appreciation of things that came before. We lost that reverence. We lost the joy of rediscovering and revisiting classics with people who loved them before we did. Those older films gave Christmas a continuity that we adopted, so we had the best of both worlds. But now that culture feels fragmented. Christmas feels less rooted in a history and tradition. The algorithms just kind of flatten out everything. If it's not new, trending, or optimized for engagement, it disappears. We've lost that sense of inheritance, the feeling of receiving a little piece of Christmas, of love, of all of that from the generations that came before us. But in the 80s and 90s, the classics helped anchor the season, even with all the new iconic stuff bursting onto the scene. These things connected us to our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, to the past, to the things that came before, the things that mattered. And that connection is the whole point of Christmas. That's sort of part of it. We've lost that monoculture. It's just what it is. It's one of the biggest differences of that younger viewers, younger generations today don't understand. In the 80s and 90s, we all watched, in the 70s too, 60s, 50s, we all watched the same things. Cable at this time was still growing. People didn't even have it. It wasn't, around. There was no internet. And the specials all aired at one time. And if you missed it, you just missed it. That scarcity created an importance, a magic, and a sense of community. When Frosty aired, we all watched Frosty. When Charlie Brown Christmas aired, we all watched it. America had it on in their living rooms. ABC would run Disney's Sunday Night at the Movies. Everybody tuned in like a weekly holiday gathering, and you knew your neighbors, your friends, whatever. They were doing the same thing. The country turned in and tuned in to one frequency. The holiday felt like a more collective heartbeat, something we were all sharing. And you compare that to now, everyone has their own streaming profile. Families binge separate series and shows on separate devices. There's no cultural Christmas moment anymore. Today, the kids are in 1,000 different universes. One watches YouTubers all day. One is on TikTok. One's watching anime. One binges Netflix originals. One scrolls Roblox and plays that. Another's lost in her VR contraption. Kids don't share experiences anymore. They share screens. That's not connection. That's just coexistence. And despite what bumper stickers would have you believe, that's not always just a good thing. The 80s and 90s had fewer options, but somehow that made Christmas bigger. I know that seems backwards, but it totally did. We traded that unity, though, for personalization. And personalization's fine on a Tuesday in mid-July, but in December at Christmas time, it kills the magic of a shared tradition. Back then, there wasn't 500 streaming services. There wasn't my algorithm versus your algorithm. There was one Christmas shared by everyone. And because of that, Christmas, a shared Christmas gave way to a rhythm. Like, I remember marking the TV guide when the specials were going to come on, or catching the coming this Sunday commercials, are this Sunday special with Jingle Bells, and waiting for Rudolph, the Grinch, Charlie Brown, all the Rankin Bass stuff that was iconic. You didn't just watch the shows either. You watched the commercials leading up to it to get excited. You knew that date and time that it was going to be on. And then the commercials themselves, the Coca-Cola Polar Bears, the Folgers Christmas commercials, even with the kids coming home from college, Toys R Us, Jingles, M&Ms, 7-Up, all this stuff. You sat there and it helped put you in the Christmas spirit. It was part of the ritual, and today everything is whenever I get to it. There is no ritual, though, in whenever I get to it. And it wasn't just TV, but and it wasn't, there's a true meaning to the season, but the pop culture ties all of us together. That is why it's pop culture. And nothing is bigger in pop culture at that time than toys. So let's talk toys, because man, there were toys that gave a heartbeat to 80s and 90s kids. If you were a kid back then, you know the feeling. Getting the Sears Wish book, those catalogs, Christmas catalogs in the mail, seeing the commercials too, man. The toy commercials were legendary. They made everything look so cool. You got that catalog. It was like a damn sacred document. It was so important to you. You were flipping through there and you were matching it up. You were thinking about those commercials and the cartoons and the movies that you watched, and then you're seeing the stuff in the print ads like He-Man, G.I. Joe, Barbie, Cabbage Patch Kids, Thundercats, Transformers. Teddy Ruxpins were everywhere, Hot Wheels, remote control cars, RC racetracks, Light Brights, Micro Machines, Atari, Nintendo, later Super Nintendo. You circled the gifts of your dreams, you starred your must-haves, all that stuff, and every time the commercials for those toys came on, you reminded everyone who would listen how amazing that toy was and how you must have it. And the magic was this: every kid in America was doing the same thing. Same pages, same cartoons, same movies, same commercials, feeding it all together. We dreamed together. Even if you didn't get the gift, the dreaming, the hoping, the wanting, the excitement, it taught patience, anticipation, and it shared a cultural universe with everybody in the country. Even if you didn't know them, it connected you. That's the power of Christmas. It's the power of pop culture. Today, kids don't circle catalogs. They scroll endless recommendations. There's micro ads targeted at you. They get whatever they want most of the time when they want it. 2-day delivery, Amazon, everything is right at your fingertips. No collecting, no waiting, no dreaming, no anticipation. And when you don't dream for something, and you don't have to wait for it, work for it, hope for it, want after it, it just doesn't mean as much. It can never be as magical. We didn't just open presents back then. We opened dreams that we had been building for months and months. And traditions were just stronger then. Overall, here is the uncomfortable truth about that. Somewhere along the way, society started acting like tradition was something to roll your eyes at, like it's something to be embarrassed about, like it's old-fashioned, outdated, not modern enough, like it's being a traditionalist is bad, having traditional values, having a traditional Christmas, bringing those traditions that your family did back, ooh, that's so cringe. Somewhere along the way, that got tossed out. But that was the lifeblood of Christmas. We respected traditions. We protected them. We passed them down. And back then, tradition wasn't political. Like it's been politicized. It wasn't cringed or old-fashioned. It wasn't political to want to be with your family or to watch this show or do this or do that, go to church or whatever. It was about how you connected to your family and the holiday. Christmas Eve gatherings with grandparents, great-grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, all of that stuff. Tree decorating nights, church services that ended with candles and silent night, neighborhoods decorated with big, giant, gaudy C9 bulbs all over the place. Cookie baking, cutting out Christmas cookies. We used to do that all the time with the Christmas cookie cutters and decorating them. School plays and Christmas pageants, choir concerts, volunteering, charity events, potluck dinners, Secret Santa gift exchanges, work Christmas parties, handwritten Christmas cards, all of that stuff. These weren't optional. They weren't a task. They weren't a chore to do. They were expected and they were joyful. They built all of this together. Today, tradition gets slapped with the label of being outdated, and the digital world isolates us. Algorithms segment us. Culture tells us old equals bad, that tradition equals regressive, that shared experiences equal boring, life is busier, family structures are fragmented. I get it, but the truth is, tradition gave Christmas its meaning. Overall, beyond the faith based meaning of Christmas, which is the foundation, traditions are what held us all as a culture, a pop culture, a monoculture together. And without tradition, without belief, and without intention, Christmas becomes just another season, just another retail holiday. Those traditions made Christmas feel real. It made Christmas feel alive because we didn't just celebrate Christmas, we lived it. And because of that, people are always now, it's a very cop out, easy thing to say. They blame commercialism or capitalism for a growing disconnect, but that's not the problem. The problem is what convenience and lack of connection has done with those things. If you were around back then, you knew that malls played a big part in our culture, and not just Christmas shopping, but family outings, hanging out with friends, having dinner, going to the arcade, being in a real, tangible space. The 80s and 90s mall at Christmas time was a universe in and of itself. The giant tree in the center court, Santa's village there, the holiday music on the radio, the smells of food from the food court, the arcades jamming out. Trust me, they were. I was in one all the time. It was called the Gold Mine. Overhead announcements about the holiday hours and sales, or if you were in Kmart, the blue light special, walking by like KB toy stores and seeing the wall of action figures in there. Christmas lived in a physical space. Lights, displays, store windows painted with snows and Santas and sleighs and crosses and bells ringing outside with red buckets, wrapping paper kiosks, photo booths, live performances. You felt Christmas everywhere. Today, Amazon boxes don't smell like any of that. Scrolling doesn't feel like any of that. So, no, it's not commercialism or capitalism that's the boogeyman that's changing Christmas. It's a loss of interaction, a loss of perspective, a loss of connection in real shared spaces. Christmas is now too often reduced to just a transaction instead of an experience. And I mean, part of that is because in the 80s and 90s, we just moved slower. We didn't have smartphones buzzing every 2 seconds. You didn't have endless content competing for your brain. You weren't juggling 19 social media apps. And people say, oh, it's just because you're getting older. No, this generation is facing things that are unprecedented. There wasn't even internet until the very late 90s. Now we live in this age where we're infinitely connected in ways that no generations have ever dealt with before, but it's separating us and disconnecting us from each other in ways that no generation has ever felt before. So back then when December came around especially, it was like a natural slowdown time. You shifted gears, you downshifted. That's a straight shift. Stick shift, manual joke there for some of you. You noticed decorations going up. You noticed the lights in your neighborhood. You went to Christmas parades. You walked outside to look at displays. You listened to your favorite singer's Christmas album. No shuffled playlist while multitasking. It didn't exist. The world didn't feel like it was speeding past you. Christmas had time to breathe. But here is the beautiful truth. The magic of the 80s and 90s and the 70s, 60s, 50s Christmas wasn't in the technology or the toys or the movies or the decades itself that I was talking about. Those were just part of it. It was in the rituals, the traditions that we chose to protect. We slowed down. We did things together. We waited for things. We passed tradition down instead of tossing it aside. And none of that is gone. We can still hold on to it. Pick one night a week. during the season to watch a Christmas movie. Make it an event. Bring back the classics. Decorate for the people in your house that you love, not for social media aesthetic. Bake something from scratch, even if it goes haywire. Light a candle and slow down for 30 minutes. Take a walk with some hot chocolate and look at Christmas lights. Drive through your old childhood neighborhood if you can. Send cards again. Give gifts that come from the heart, that are not just algorithm suggested. Pick one tradition, just one, and protect it fiercely. None of that costs anything. It just takes intention. And I'm not saying that everything that has come now is bad. There's great things, all right? But cherry pick. Take the good things from now, add it to the good things from then, and make something new out of all of it. Don't discard any of it. Bring it together. Lift it all up and pass it forward, because magic was never effortless to begin with. Magic is something that we make. And the best news about all of this, the hope, is that we can still do these things. Nothing is stopping us from doing it now. Christmas back then in the 80s, 90s, it was better because we valued those things and life was simpler. Even though there was plenty going on, our culture was shared, our traditions were respected. But the spirit of those decades, the feeling we're nostalgic for, the warmth of those living rooms with the wood paneling and the color tube TV, the countdown chains, the advent calendars, the snow days, the toy store aisles, the VHS tapes and commercials that practically smelled like Christmas coming through there. All of that magic still exists. It's just quieter now. It's harder to notice. It's buried under the convenience and speed and the mockery that's on top of it today. But it is there. It is waiting for us. Christmas isn't supposed to be fast or algorithmic or optimized. It's supposed to be shared, felt, lived, remembered. So slow down, be present, choose meaning over momentum, and bring back the Christmas you remember. Not because it's old, not because it used to be so great, but because it was real, and it still is. Christmas used to stand for family, faith, wonder, togetherness, and the belief that magic can exist in the real world. And the great news is, it still means all of those things. We just have to choose them again. We just have to believe. And I hope you and your family and friends have an amazing holiday season, an amazing Christmas. And I am Chase with AV Pop Culture. And remember, be kind, rewind like always. And I'll see you real soon. Merry Christmas. Bye-bye. I know.